The US auto industry is under attack, but this time the threat isn't coming from China or Europe. It's coming from Canada. That's right. Our biggest trade partner just made a move that could skyrocket American car production costs, send prices soaring, and push thousands of jobs overseas. But this isn't just about tariffs. Tesla, Ford, and General Motors are all caught in the crossfire, and the entire auto industry is hanging in the balance. What started as a tariff dispute has now turned into a full-scale economic standoff. Billions of dollars in auto trade are at risk. Tesla and the entire EV industry could face a major crisis. Factory closures and massive layoffs may be coming. In today's video, we're breaking down how Canada is strategically targeting the US auto sector, the devastating impact on Tesla and the electric vehicle industry, why this trade war could force factory shutdowns and job losses, and the political battle behind the economic chaos, Trump, tariffs, and the 2024 election. With automakers scrambling, prices soaring, and political tensions reaching a breaking point, the future of North America's auto industry has never been more uncertain. What do you think? Will this trade war backfire on the US, or is Canada making a bold stand? What's happening? Trade disputes between the United States and Canada are nothing new. But this time, something is different. What started as a straightforward tariff decision by the United States has escalated into a full-scale economic standoff, with Canada launching a strategic counterstrike that could shift the balance of power in North American trade. Instead of reacting impulsively, Canada has taken a precise and calculated approach, choosing to hit the United States where it hurts the most. In response to the United States' 25% tariff on key Canadian exports, Canada has imposed its own set of retaliatory tariffs. But rather than applying broad, indiscriminate tariffs, Canada has targeted politically and economically sensitive industries that impact key voter bases and major corporations. Among the hardest hit sectors are American agriculture, bourbon exports from Kentucky, and, most importantly, the auto industry. One of the most devastating blows came from Canada's decision to place heavy tariffs on electric vehicles and critical automotive parts. With billions of dollars in auto trade flowing between the two countries each year, this move has sent shockwaves through the industry. It has not only affected automakers, but also disrupted the complex web of suppliers, dealers, and workers who depend on a smooth, tariff-free trade system. But this is not just about economics. It is a strategic message. Canada is proving that it will not be pushed around and that it has the power to make trade restrictions hurt the United States just as much, if not more. What started as a trade war may now be turning into a battle of political leverage. The question is, how much damage will this do to the American economy before Washington takes action? And Canada is not stopping there. The biggest blow is coming for one of America's most influential automakers, Tesla, and the EV industry. In crisis, Tesla has long been considered the face of American innovation, but now the electric vehicle giant is caught in the crossfire of this trade war, and the consequences could be devastating. At the core of Tesla's production success is its reliance on key raw materials from Canada. The company sources nickel, lithium, and aluminum, all critical components in electric vehicle batteries, from Canadian suppliers. But with Canada now imposing strict tariffs and restrictions on these exports, Tesla's supply chain is at risk of grinding to a halt. The immediate consequences are severe. With supply costs skyrocketing, Tesla will be forced to either raise prices on its vehicles or cut production, both of which spell trouble for the company's growth and profitability. Investors have already taken notice. Tesla's stock has seen sharp fluctuations as fears of a supply crisis continue to mount. But this isn't just about Tesla. The entire electric vehicle market in the United States is now feeling the impact. Other automakers, including Ford, General Motors, and Rivian, also depend on Canadian resources to manufacture their EV models. The inflation of raw material prices means that the cost of producing an electric vehicle will surge, making it harder for consumers to afford them. The irony, the Biden administration has been aggressively pushing for a transition to electric vehicles as part of its climate goals. Yet, this trade war could derail the entire EV industry before it even reaches mass adoption. The more expensive EVs become, the less likely the average consumer is to make the switch, setting the industry back years. And, as if the EV crisis weren't enough, the situation is about to get worse for automakers across the board. The auto industry's breaking point. The North American auto industry is one of the most interconnected supply chains in the world. A single car can have parts that cross the US-Canada border multiple times before it is fully assembled. But with these new tariffs, that seamless supply chain is beginning to crack, and automakers are scrambling to respond. For decades, manufacturers have. Text continues. The supply chain relied on a predictable, tariff-free flow of materials between the United States and Canada: aluminum, steel, computer chips, batteries, and even glass, all essential components of modern vehicles. These materials are shipped between factories in both countries dozens of times before a car rolls off the production line. Now, with sudden tariffs adding billions in extra costs, automakers are being forced to make impossible decisions. Some companies are already cutting production. Ford has announced potential layoffs at plants that rely heavily on Canadian parts. General Motors has slowed output at some facilities due to supply chain bottlenecks. The biggest fear: factory closures and job losses. Then, there is the issue of pricing. Every added cost in the supply chain eventually gets passed on to consumers. If this trade war continues, American consumers could face the biggest price hikes in auto history. Buying a new car, already expensive due to chip shortages and inflation, could soon become out of reach for millions of Americans. The greatest irony: these tariffs were initially designed to protect American manufacturing jobs, but instead of boosting domestic production, they are forcing factories to shut down, leading to layoffs and economic uncertainty. This trade war is doing the exact opposite of what it was intended to achieve. And as economic conditions worsen, political pressure is reaching a boiling point. The battle over trade is now becoming a major political issue that could shape the upcoming elections. The political fallout. This trade war is no longer just about economics. It has become a political weapon, dividing leaders, influencing elections, and shaping the future of North American relations. President Donald Trump has been a vocal supporter of protectionist trade policies, arguing that tariffs will force companies to bring manufacturing back to the United States. But his strategy has had unintended consequences, especially in key swing states, where factories are now laying off workers instead of hiring them. With the 2024 election approaching, Trump's trade policies are under scrutiny, and his supporters in manufacturing-heavy states are starting to question whether these tariffs are truly helping American workers. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has framed this trade war as a fight for Canada's sovereignty. He has positioned Canada's retaliatory measures as a necessary defense against economic bullying, rallying national support for the tariffs. Many Canadians now see this as a moment of national pride, a chance to stand up to the United States and prove that Canada will not be taken advantage of. The question is, how long can this political standoff last before it spirals into a full-scale economic crisis? With factory jobs on the line, auto prices rising, and global markets reacting to the chaos, both leaders are under pressure to find a way out of this escalating trade war. But with elections looming on both sides of the border, neither wants to be seen as backing down. If this trade war continues, the economic consequences could spread far beyond the auto industry, hitting other sectors that no one expected. Energy, Canada's ultimate leverage. If you think the trade war between the United States and Canada is bad now, imagine what would happen if Canada decided to weaponize its energy exports. The United States relies heavily on Canadian oil, natural gas, and electricity to power its economy. While Canada has not yet played this card, the mere possibility is enough to send shivers through Washington. Right now, Canada is the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the United States, accounting for nearly 50% of all US oil imports. That means if Canada were to cut exports or raise prices, the consequences would be immediate and catastrophic. Gasoline prices would skyrocket overnight, leading to an inflation surge that could cripple American consumers and businesses alike. Beyond oil, Canada is also a major supplier of electricity to the northern United States. Cities like New York, Chicago, and Detroit rely on Canadian hydroelectric power to keep their grids running smoothly. If Canada were to limit electricity exports, rolling blackouts and power shortages could become a reality, forcing the US to scramble for alternative sources. The mere threat of such a move gives Canada enormous leverage in trade negotiations. While Canadian officials have not yet taken drastic action, the message is clear. If the United States continues to push unfair trade policies, Canada has the power to strike back in ways that could cripple entire industries and disrupt millions of lives. But energy is just one piece of the puzzle. Global reverberations. What started as a bilateral dispute is now creating a ripple effect across the global economy. Other countries are watching this trade war unfold, and many of them are adjusting their own trade policies in response. One of the biggest winners in this situation? China. As tensions between the United States and Canada escalate, China is stepping in to strengthen trade ties with Canada, offering lucrative deals on energy, raw materials, and auto parts. If China successfully secures long-term agreements with Canadian suppliers, the United States could permanently lose access to crucial resources, a move that would weaken American industries for years to come. At the same time, European nations are looking to shift their trade alliances with North American economic uncertainty on the rise. Germany, France, and the United Kingdom are rethinking their supply chains and looking for more stable trade partners. If this trend continues, American companies could lose billions in global trade opportunities, all because of a conflict that could have been avoided. Then there is the issue of developing nations. Countries in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia are seeing new opportunities to step in and fill the gaps left by disrupted North American trade. This means that American businesses may no longer be the first choice for international markets, further weakening US economic dominance. The longer this trade war continues, the more the United States risks losing its influence on the global stage. Trade is not just about money. It is about trust, relationships, and long-term partnerships. Right now, many countries are questioning whether the United States is still a reliable trade partner. And while global markets are feeling the impact, the people who will suffer the most are ordinary consumers. The financial toll is already hitting households across America, rising costs and shrinking paychecks. For politicians in Washington, trade wars are a matter of policy and strategy. But for everyday Americans, they are a matter of survival. Inflation has already been a major concern for millions of families, and now this trade war is making everything worse. The cost of everyday goods, from groceries to gas to household essentials, is climbing higher as businesses struggle to absorb the added cost of tariffs. One of the biggest price hikes is automobiles, as the cost of car production rises due to supply chain disruptions. Consumers are being hit with record-breaking sticker prices. Buying a new car is already out of reach for many Americans, and now even the used car market is becoming unaffordable as demand outpaces supply. But the problem does not stop there. Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum mean that prices for appliances, construction materials, and electronics are soaring. That means if you are planning to buy a new refrigerator, renovate your home, or upgrade your smartphone, you can expect to pay significantly more in the coming months. And then there is the job market. The very tariffs that were meant to protect. American jobs are now forcing businesses to lay off workers. Companies that rely on Canadian materials are cutting costs wherever possible, leading to factory closures, pay cuts, and widespread job uncertainty. The result? Thousands of American workers are now facing unemployment, and for those who still have jobs, their paychecks are not stretching as far as they used to. This is not just an economic inconvenience, it is a full-blown financial crisis for millions of families. If this trade war does not de-escalate soon, American consumers could be looking at one of the worst cost of living crises in modern history. This trade war is not just about Canada and the United States. It is part of a much larger global shift. But while the decline of manufacturing is concerning, there is another major shift happening. This trade war is not just a short-term political dispute. It is part of a larger global shift. The more the United States isolates itself with tariffs and trade restrictions, the more opportunities it creates for other nations to rise in power. But the auto industry is just one piece of the puzzle. What happens next? Will the US continue down this path of economic isolation? Or will leaders find a way to restore balance and rebuild trust with its trade partners? The next few months could determine the long-term future of America's economic standing, and the consequences will be felt for decades to come. Immigration crackdowns and the farming crisis. While the trade war between the United States and Canada has dominated headlines, another crisis is brewing, one that could devastate the American agricultural industry. The strict immigration policies proposed by President Donald Trump could cripple farms across the country